articulate what we feel. And we learn.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, excited to review the sophomore effort from James Blake entitled Overgrown. James Blake, an artist that we actually got to review his debut album in 2011. It was one that got a ton of buzz. Like, people were talking about it because he dropped a few tracks and a couple EPs in 2010 that had a song that got really popular. It's 4 letters, I forget what they are now, but I actually listened to that song today because I had never heard it and really enjoyed it. But then we debuted his self-titled first album in early 2011, and both of us really liked that album. Yeah. Marked that, James Blake, he has a there's 2 things about James Blake that if you aren't familiar with his work, you need to be familiar with, is that he has a very unique voice, and he's all about electronic production and composition. I mean, that's really what sums up his music. He has that almost like a neo-soul / R&B style to his voice.
It's kind of like this heartbroken croon, kind of soulful.
And he makes these really dark, atmospheric, electronically textured, beat-based songs that focus. It's almost like, I heard the words neo-dubstep on Wikipedia. I read that, and it kind of makes sense because it's focused on pitch modulation of beats and stuff like that, and it sounds really cool. What he's able to do with beats and contorting the beat and making it sound so unique really adds a lot and helps his songs kind of form and build and everything. Now, on Overgrown, he took what he did in his debut and expanded upon it. This is exactly what I look for when I'm looking at an artist's sophomore album. I want to see what are they doing to expand their craft. How are they making what they did that impressed me and Tom in their debut album? What are they doing to make it better? And I feel like Overgrown does a lot of things in the songwriting, in the production, and in Blake's vocals that really got me excited. Tom, how about you? What did you think?
Well, as far as sophomore efforts go, I was also impressed.
Yeah.
I think that this album comes off as a lot more focused than his debut. I feel like it actually flows a little better. For me, it didn't quite have the highlights.
Sure.
Tracks from his self-titled album, like Wilhelm Scream, I Never Learned to Share, even his cover of Limit to Your Love, which he just owns, are just wonderful. But I feel like that album was also a little more track by track. Overgrown at just under 40 minutes with a much more consistent sound, and also not quite as minimalistic.
Right.
I feel like for that reason, this album feels like more of an album, and I really like that. Now going from that kind of feel to the songwriting itself, I thought it was a little inconsistent, but still good quality overall.
Right.
The first half really stands out to me as being a lot stronger than the back half, but at the same time, the back half isn't bad. I still think he's doing a lot of cool stuff with the sounds, good songwriting, killer melodies, but really it's just that those first like 4 or 5 tracks just knocked it out of the park for me.
And I think that Blake, it really shows his control over dynamics on this record, and the fact that he was able to create just really lush atmospheres. Yeah. And that was something that wasn't really present on the debut album. I mean, you saw you'd have these very quiet, bass tones and beats and things like that just kind of gave slight textures to it, but it was almost just like, it was much more minimalistic, as you said, where this, you have much more lush compositions. And Blake's voice on this album really goes above and beyond, I think. I think he was just more aggressive in his vocal parts, writing great vocal melodies, and his performance is just killer. I thought he just nailed it.
And even the vocal production. Yeah. I love especially what he does with, not to get too technical here, but what he does with a lot of the panning. He'll have the vocals, kind of split. Maybe they'll be front and center, and then they'll kind of spread out and make room for another melody that comes in the center. And when I'm just listening from a production mindset, and I hear those kinds of things that he's using, I just think, man, what a great attention to detail. Right. And he's really thinking spatially about how to achieve the effect he wants with his vocals. I love that.
And Overgrown has a very specific mood as well. And it's not really like, it's not really cathartic, and it's more of just this austere kind of introspective mood. Like on a rainy day when you're just sitting there thinking to yourself about, life and pondering like why your life is the way it is,
And it's not necessarily positive or negative or pessimistic or optimistic.
It walks that gray area.
Yes, it totally does.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool, just his ability to just control that. I just have to respect this guy. He has a ton of just original ideas, and the way he executes all of the things that go all the aspects of his music is just kind of it's original, it's cutting edge, and he does it with such style that you have to like James Blake. Now, I will say that I agree the back half was not as strong as the front half. I felt the song Digital Lion, which actually had Brian Eno helping out writing it, and
if you're in this genre, who better to work with?
Right. I thought that track was, I mean, that track knocked me off my feet. Track 8, Voyeur, a little bit more progressive. He's experimenting more with his sound, and towards the end of it, and to tell you the truth, this is usually not a good thing, but I kind of like this here. I thought that song was a lot longer than what it was. I mean, it feels like a longer track. It's only 4 minutes and 17 seconds. But towards the end, it really starts to get going, and there's, you know, it kind of is moving in multiple directions at once. It kind of feels like it's losing its focus, and then I feel like, you know, tracks 9 and 10 could have been a little bit stronger and more impactful, because, you know, the statement that this album makes in the first 7 tracks, and really in the first 8 tracks, needed and should have been continued throughout the entire thing, and I feel like that's the only thing I can really harp on, is there should have just been a bit more statement, and towards the end of the album, and I would have felt like it was more rounded out. So that took a hit for it for me, but I still feel like Overgrown is an exceptionally good album that I'll be coming back to all year.
Yeah, another track that I want to point out is track 4, Take a Fall for Me, featuring RZA, and I think that that's a really good guest spot.
Absolutely.
I think he does a great job. He works within the confines of the sound and enhances it, and especially the placement of that song at track 4. You know, the first few tracks, just great writing, sets up the mood and the ideas for the album, and then that track in there with the rap guest spot really helps break it up. I think it was a terrific move.
And RZA does a great job.
Yeah, he does.
That is a great point, because the placement of that track is perfect, because it totally gives some you know, break in what James Blake was doing in the first 3 tracks and sets the back half of the album up. So I really feel like that couldn't have been done any better.
I totally agree.
This guy has a lot of style and everything that he does. I was a big fan of this album. However, you know, like I said, the back half kind of pushed. There was a limit to my love, as we said with the first album. So I'm gonna go 78 on this one.
I'm gonna go 84.
Yeah,
I really like this.
You really like this one, and I think that with more listens, I've listened to this one a lot actually. But the thing is, I can keep listening to this over and over, and I seem to like it just a little more every time.
Cool.
I think with more listens, I'll like this even more, and it'll end up being on our end of the year list. What did you guys think of Overgrown? Let us know at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums from 2013 you want to see us review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Attraction is causing a strong reaction. I need you like I need satisfaction. I need you like I need satisfaction.